we had an amazing team of people who went over and above their responsibilities, or the bare minimum that was required of a student. And that's really what I think the difference is between people who are successful. And by successful, I mean, it doesn't mean money or anything like that. It just means someone who's able to take an idea, take a concept, and bring it to fruition. I think the main difference between other people and successful people is successful people go over and above. They do the stuff that you don't have to do.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edit Undo podcast. So today we are going to be taking a little bit of a journey back into part of my past to someone that I know and has, played a significant part in my journey, especially around the varsity time. So back when I was still studying at the University of Pretoria, when I was, I guess, sometimes supposed to be studying, what I was actually doing with my time was I was part of an organization called Enactus. Now, Enactus is a very interesting organization for a number of reasons. One of the first reasons is it actually exposes students to the business environment while you're still a student. So it's essentially an organization that aims to enable entrepreneurial action for the betterment of the communities around us. And so there were a number of projects that we sort of engaged in, and Taku, our guest for today, was actually one of the executive committee members of the year that I was a senior member in Enactus. And so, we got to know each other there, spent a lot of time together, got up to a little bit of mischief here and there. And eventually, when I dropped out of university, we went our separate ways. And what I'm hoping for today is that we can fill in that gap and talk a little bit about where each of our lives took us, and then chat a little bit about Africa as a whole. But before we get there, Taku, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Alfie? How's it going, Stephanie? Steph, if I can. And how's it going to everyone else who's listening, man? Thanks for having me on the program. This is super great to connect with, an old-time colleague, and really happy to hear about the stuff that you and Steph are doing out there. And yeah, I love seeing content like this and sharing ideas with everyone. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Amazing.
Then you're in the perfect space.
Exactly. And I think this is the first time we're having like a fellow audio content creator. I guess because you and I have been.
That's true. Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting. And
probably someone that's even more professional than us.
It's super nice being interviewed for as well. I'm so tired of asking all the questions, so someone ask me something.
I'm still waiting for that point in time. It's completely different being on the other side of that situation. So I hope we do your career and your journey justice in this conversation. And maybe a place to start is I sort of want to start a little bit from when you and I were still collaborating in Enactus. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about maybe either some of the projects that you did while you were there, or why maybe that sort of entrepreneurial action as a student is important, and then we can kind of go like your journey from there.
So the funny thing, Alfie, is in your introduction you're like, Taku was actually in Enactus, which is absolutely true. I was actually in Enactus, which was like it was something that I wasn't very likely to do. I think I spent my first 3 years of university doing what most university students do, absolutely fooling around. I took about 5 years to do a 3-year degree because I only got serious in my 3rd year. So, my 4th year I was like, okay, fine, I think let me start making the most of the fees that my parents are paying here, and let me get involved. And I joined Enactus That was in 2015. I went in, and I think what really was able to trap me was the community of people who were like-minded, because I was always talking about business, always a dreamer, always wanted to get things going, but I didn't really have an environment or a community that could show me how to do it. I just had all these ideas, but I had no practical sense of how do you go from A to B. I always had a little bit of hustle in me, but it was just hustle. There was no planning, there was no structure, there was no skills development, it was nothing. So somehow, I ended up absolutely falling in love with this program. They put me through, speaking training. They put me through presentation training. They put me through leadership training. And it was able to mold me into the person that I am now. Even the career that I'm in is as a result of Enactus. I was actually, it was in the year 2016. 2016. And I've always been a backbencher, and I was that cool kid who didn't want to get involved too much. So it was time for elections, and I was like, Taku, why aren't you applying, to be on the executive committee? And I was like, I'm not going to make it. That's why. And then they're like, nah, just apply, put your name in the hat. I put my name in the hat, and I actually wanted to run for the position of events manager. And someone was like, no, Taku, I think marketing manager more suits you. It's more in line with what your personality says. And I applied. And next thing you know, I was made marketing manager, and I was really thrown into the deep end because I had to assume all the responsibilities of it and look like I know what I'm doing, even though I didn't know what I was doing half of the time.
Yeah.
And
it shows you just, what it can do when someone believes in you.
Yeah, and look at me now, 5-6 years later. Marketing is my profession. It's what I do. It's my passion in everything that I do. I'm involved in multiple projects like a good Zimbabwean is. But with everything I do, there's a marketing backbone to it. So, yeah, it was an exciting journey. Enactus was able to put us on stages, build our confidence. Now I'm actually able to pay to speak. I'm paid for speaking, sorry. And I'll just take you through one more thing on my Enactus journey that I found super cool. I remember it was the Nationals tournament in 2015, and I had practiced really, really hard on the question and answer.
Sorry,
team.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second, just to give the context of what the Nationals competition is. So in Enactus, each university essentially has a chapter, and each university has a number of projects that are sort of non-profit entrepreneurial projects. And then once a year, all the universities come together and present their project, and the projects that do the best essentially win an award and win that year's national competition. So, sorry, you can carry on.
Yeah, so I was on the question and answer team for that, and it's super hard because you're being asked all these questions on the spot, on stage, in front of all these members of the audience, and you're young, you're on the spot. And business owners as well, executives, from high-ranking companies. So I was there on stage. I practiced so hard, and when the questions were being asked, or the time came for me to answer, I absolutely froze. I stuck. And I think all 3 questions went by. I think I knew the answers to the questions. I just couldn't get my hand to come up for the sake, I don't know what was going on. Couldn't get my hand to come up. And I was actually, the team did really well. But at the end of the day, I remember going home and being extremely disappointed in myself. That hurt me quite a lot. And it really messed with my ego. That the next year, when I was now in a position to be training other speakers, in the back of my head, I was like, okay, fine. I'm gonna make up for what happened last year. And so for the next year came by, and the question came through, and I had been preparing. I was ready for whatever question was coming my way. So I put my hand up. The second they asked it, I'm like, okay, I've got this. I'm gonna answer. Get it out the way at the beginning. So I say my spiel, I answer my question, and I'm feeling like I hit all my points. I threw in all my little buzzwords that I thought were going to be cool. And then at the end of the whole presentation, people clap and all that. But at the end of the presentation, I go and talk to my team. They're like, hey, Taku, you answered a question on the wrong project there. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. But I don't think anyone really noticed because I answered it so confidently. I don't think anyone noticed I wasn't talking about the right project at the time.
Enough conviction.
Yeah, but it just goes to show that, you know what, the first time it went really bad. The second time also went pretty bad, but we were able to, you know, to make it look smooth. And now
Also-
I've been able to practice and hone in on the skill. That it's actually what I do for a living now. So it just goes to share what Enactus is about. You know, no one there really knew what they were doing per se, but we were able to get a platform to experiment, to try things out that we would do in the real world. So that was the start.
Yeah. I think it's also nice to hear, you know, a lot of people who are in the space of being a speaker, whether it's a radio personality or keynote speaker or something of that sort, feels that it's something that comes very naturally to a lot of people. But, you know, just like you mentioned now as well, there is a big learning curve. There's intentional practice that also goes into that skill. It's not just that, you know, you were a really good speaker from high school and you just eased into this career that you're in now. You mean there were clear failures that you could have said, okay, this is not for me. Let me rather go do something else. Maybe I should go be an accountant where I don't speak at all, you know. But you show us differently to learn from that experience and to actually put yourself out there again. It's quite a story.
Yeah, and I think like just one thing I want to add on that also is because it's so funny, Taku, because I had a similar experience in the first year. So the first year where you said you didn't really put your hand up. So I was working on a project and they asked a question. And I think it was a project that I was working on and I'd been working with the project leader. And so in a sense, I was kind of like the deputy project leader. It was when I was still working on
the go-to guy for all the answers.
But the thing is, I froze. I didn't know what to say. So somebody else eventually had to answer, and that also hit me because, you know, when we speak about it, and you imagine you're a bunch of students doing talks, what you imagine is somebody standing at the front of a lecture hall, and you know there's maybe like 50 people watching. But that's not the case. Like the nationals competition is in Sandton Convention Center, and there's about like 400 people with like a stage and lights, and you've got your mic. And a person that's like the executive of a business is asking you a question about the projects that you've been running for the past 6 months. So the pressure is on. And in a sense, I froze. And for me, that was like, again, I think for me, it was also a bit of an ego hit. But I think afterwards, I kind of like I went to like the outside of the convention center and I was kind of like moping around a little bit. And I remember, Anthony sort of like came and chatted to me for a little bit. And I mean, I don't remember exactly what he told me, but as a result, one of the things I realized is for quite a while, I'd been relying on myself too much and not sort of taking the support of the team where I could have. And, you know, whether it is because I was trying to show that I was capable or something else, I don't really know. But it was sort of one of the big lessons for me that sort of taught me about like being able to allow your team to support you even when you can do it, because in a sense it also empowers the team in a sense. And so like I think that was a big learning experience for me. And then another thing also that I want to maybe get you to talk about a little bit that was really crazy is one of the things that Enactus did was the diary. And that actually was a really big marketing project because in a sense Enactus was responsible for creating the university diary, and that meant getting all of the marketing for the diary. It meant preparing the print for the diary. Like, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about some of the experiences you had actually getting sponsorship on behalf of the university?
Thanks for reminding me about that. You know, like you can leave out some of the most important bits. That diary project was great, and again one of the most fundamental parts of what I do now. You know, I started doing at university by luck at that time. You know, finding sponsors for promotional content, promotional material. That's what we do in this space, and we were able to start that with the Enactus diary. So this was something that I got thrust into in my first year in Enactus, where I was actually just a member of the diary project, and we were working under a guy called Daniel Makola at the time. And he was a great leader because he motivated us and he gave us enough confidence in our abilities to actually go out and sell advertisements in this diary. And I think that was my first time having to go sell, something to a big
real
corporate.
companies.
So Hatfield was quite a university town, university centered town, and students really make up majority of any business's clients in that area. So automatically, a University of Pretoria student diary was prime marketing space for majority of the businesses there. So we would go out, on our feet. I had no car at the time, so I'd walk all across, campus, trying to sell, pitching, with my proposal, going out and trying to make something happen. And I was able to sell, I think, just 3 ads for about 10,000 Rand each at that time.
Yo.
That was my first year. That was my first bit of taste of the action. I was like, hey, okay, wow, this can be done. In the following year, I was now the marketing manager of that project. And that's when I realized, the guy before me made it look really easy. Eh? He was just like, just go out there and sell. You got this. I didn't know that there was so much to go with it, design. I wasn't a designer myself. I had to get involved in design, designing the interior of, we did everything ourselves, we didn't just copy paste, get a diary, printed out by a big manufacturer, no. We did every single bit ourselves. We had university students coming in and putting a quote on each page. So, Alfie has a quote in there somewhere. I'll pull that out at some point. But, we put a lot of time and a lot of energy into that. But also, one of the testaments I must say about that program, that Enactus program, was they prepped us for project management. I think to manage such a project at that age was only as a result of actually a project management course we did at the university. And was able to, to show you how to structure a project, how to work with teams. And not just in the airy-fairy way of, I work with teams, blah, 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 blah. No, but how do you actually, who does what needs to be done, what are the deliverables, right into the nitty-gritties of the affairs. And so we were able to successfully sell out all the diaries. We made about 250,000 Rand for the program at that time, which was really one of the main fundraising initiatives for the program. And like I say, we had an amazing team of people that were behind the scenes working. I gotta commend, Zinzi did all the design work on that. I'll tell you that now. We had, Dean Manyegawana, Linda Princely. We had an amazing team of people who went over and above their responsibilities, or the bare minimum that was required of a student. And that's really what I think the difference is between people who are successful. And by successful, I mean, it doesn't mean money or anything like that. It just means someone who's able to take an idea, take a concept and bring it to fruition. I think the main difference between other people and successful people is successful people go over and above. They do the stuff that you don't have to do.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So,
yeah.
You've said a lot, and what stands out to me is firstly how important programs like these are for students, especially people who struggle to decide or figure out where they should be focusing their skills and which profession. And it's so amazing to hear that there are programs out there like this. But Taku, you mentioned earlier when you introduced yourself that you are in the marketing space and you're running a few programs. Can you share a little bit about where are you involved at the moment and in what type of capacity or space, what are you doing?
All right. I think for me to summarize it all, for me to put a caption over it, I would refer to myself as a media and marketing strategist. Okay, I am a serial entrepreneur. I am a passionate visionary, and I'm a doer. So I am the founder of an organization called the Young Africa Network. And the Young Africa Network is simply a platform for young people to get access to information, get access to networks, and get access to training. So we do financial training as well. So the idea behind this is that, I was very fortunate to grow up from a privileged background. And, in the country that I stay in, it gives you access to people that many other people will not have access to, or platforms or spaces where information is actually disseminated that doesn't trickle down to other spaces. But just to bridge the gap between those opportunities. So that's the gist between the Young Africa Network, and we're roping in people from everywhere, from every demographic. Whatever you do, let's share our skills, let's share our services with each other. So that's the gist of it, and we're reaching out to people across the border in South Africa, there in Rwanda and Uganda, in Kenya and Zimbabwe and Zambia. It's one Africa now, you know. So that's, you know, I will lead more on this point further on. But I'm also a marketing consultant. So by virtue of my work in the media space, I've been able to position myself well in front of the market. So I do marketing consultancy for different brands, various brands, and measurable marketing strategies for people who really want to tailor their message to a specific demographic. And we try and make it, you know, very 21st century, very fresh, very new ideas that are based on actual, you know, situations of the ground. Yeah. And I say this looking into Africa as a whole. You know, we don't really want to look at copy-paste solutions anymore. Solutions need to be specifically designed for the people that they're being implemented for. So, you know, you say marketing consultancy, that's one thing, but when you market something, you have to market a product that you can market. So it very often leads into product development, you know, conceptualization of the organization's, you know, structure, their vision, their internal culture. It leads into many things. It's just to call it marketing consultancy is actually to do it an injustice. On top of that, I am a radio presenter. I have a show on ZFM Stereo, which is the Young Money Show. And this is actually an offshoot of the Young African Network. So the Young Money Show is really, you know, how we get our message out and how we share with people what young people are doing. You know, the situation is slightly different in South Africa, but in Zimbabwe, you know, I think we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the country, 95%, unofficially.
You mean in the whole of Africa?
In Zimbabwe. In
Zimbabwe.
In 95.
No, I mean,
so, you know,
you said highest in the country. That's in the continent,
one of
right?
one in the one of the highest in the continent.
Wow.
And look, I think we're at a point now where people need to realize no one is coming to save you. You know, the government's not going to just suddenly create jobs out of nowhere when they haven't done it all this time. You know, so people, you know, the only way to create jobs is to have more entrepreneurs. Is to have more people doing things for themselves. You know, citizens can, you know, create their own environment. So we have, you know, a lot of people who don't believe that it can be done in Zimbabwe because they only see very few examples of figures who may not necessarily actually be business people, or they've been highly promoted based on purely, you know, material values. But you don't actually see the soldiers working in the background who've worked on something for 5 years, 10 years, and developed a real, meaningful, tangible business. And our job here is simply to highlight some of the success stories, some of the cases of real young role models that have gone out, that have done it, you know, based on their own grit. We don't have enough of those stories, and this is just something that I think has proven to be of value to many people. You know, I always wanted, you know, to see a young person like me who could say, hey, Taku, this is how I did it, like this, like this, like this, without, you know, sugarcoating it, trying to make the story look fancy. How did you do it? How many times did you fail? You know, which office did you go to? You know, a very relatable story. Yeah. And it's been an exciting journey over the last, we've been running for a year now. It's been a super exciting journey. I think our biggest listener is myself. Actually, you know,
that's amazing.
Whenever we get into the studio and I meet a different young person, and you hear what they're saying and you hear what they're doing, it takes every single excuse you had away.
Yeah.
You know, when you say I can't do this because I can't do this, I'm still too young. The banks don't believe in me because I'm still too young. That's nonsense. There's people who've done it and they've done more, and they've come from humble backgrounds. You know, so
yeah. So I'm hoping that we can chat a little bit later on about some of the guests that you've had and some of those stories. But before we get there, like we've talked a little bit about the beginning and we've talked a little bit about the end. But I wanna sort of bridge that gap a little bit. Like how did you get to where you are, in a sense? Like how does this marketing manager of a small like university extracurricular activity end up being a radio presenter, a marketing consultant, and like a community developer? Like how did that happen?
A little bit of good luck, a little bit of bad luck, a little bit of life, and a little bit of hunger, man. Just it's what I am, and it's what I've always wanted to be, and I will continue going at it until life says, okay, I'm tired, dude. So, straight out of varsity, I got a job in Sandton. I was working at a real estate agency in Sandton. And it was an amazing job. Absolutely enjoyed it. Made some great connections and got a good feel for what the tempo is and how it is doing working in corporate in South Africa. Mm-hmm. I had to leave that job quite shortly after, based on permit issues. Being from across the border, and I wasn't in a position that I felt that I wanted to live in the country legally or participate in any of that. So I was like, okay, no, fine. Let me go back home and build from there. Mm-hmm. I got back to Zimbabwe and did the usual Zimbabwean stint. When you come back, your 6 months of unemployment, searching, doing any odd job you can, bothering aunts, uncles, cousins, until I got very lucky. I was one of the few that got lucky, and I got a role working at ZFM as a marketing associate. ZFM is like one of Zimbabwe's top urban radio stations. It's our what's like that in South Africa?
5FM.
Yeah, it's like 5FM. It's hot. It's hip. They play hip hop and all the cool stuff. The other radio stations are more localized. So I was, that was great because they threw me into the deep end. Absolutely threw me straight into the deep end. My second week at ZFM, I was organizing an international boxing match. My second week. Yes. I knew nothing. Right? I knew absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. But hey, it worked out in the end. So I joined ZFM Stereo, and there I was doing marketing, and I was running events as well. That was really exciting because I got to operate at a level that I hadn't operated at. What happens is that whenever someone comes to a country or something needs to be done in the country, the first place that things go is the radio station, because information must always be shared. Yeah. So, I was privy to meet a lot of big people, to work with a lot of big people. I was lucky to work with the likes of Bonang and them. Wow. While I was, very young, fresh out of varsity, I enjoyed that. And from there, I got an opportunity in South Africa. And another opportunity in South Africa. So my ex-boss from my job, my short stint in South Africa, asked me to come back. And he was like, are you interested? And when you're young and everything, the grass is always greener, right? So I was like, game, let me go, let me check it out. And just before I left, a little bit of bad luck happened. So the guy called me, says, Taku, you can't come. I'm like, what do you mean I can't come? He says, I've been fired, and the whole division I was about to start up has also been disbanded. So I don't know, mate. Jeez. Yeah, so things got highly complicated there. And long story short, I went through a very tough period then, and came back to Zim again, right? And while I was in Zim, I tried my hand, trying to see where I could land. I tried to work in the entrepreneurship space, see what I could do. Mm-hmm. But with how the economy is set up, it's very difficult to float. Having just come back from somewhere, you don't have a stable job yet. There's not many stable jobs. I was fortunate I was throwing my CV around, and let me tell you the story. Very funny story. I bumped into a friend. Mm-hmm. I was out. I bumped into a friend. And she says, Taku, I've seen your CV at my company. She worked for a recruitment agency. And she says, my boss was actually going through your CV and saying, these are the types of people that you need to get jobs. And I was like, oh, really? That's crazy, because you guys have never called me once. So why are you using my CV as an example in your meetings? You've never called me. The very next day, that was a Monday, I got a phone call saying, Taku, we've got an interview for you. Heavy. I went for the interview and actually went for an interview for the wrong job. Hey? Funnily.
How did that
Yeah. Because I didn't know what interview I was going for. Funnily
Okay,
enough,
see?
I didn't know what the interview was. So I was actually dressed in jeans and a shady shirt, and I just went for the interview because there was no time to think about anything. So I go for the interview. I'm like, "What's the position?" And she just sends me the job description. I'm like, "Okay, whatever. There's no time to read this." So I just went straight into the interview. I speak to the MD there, and we have a chat. He enjoys me. We have a good chat, and then at the end he says, "Look, Taco, I like you, but I don't think you would like this position." And this was a position for the role of operations manager.
Heavy.
I am not.
Yeah.
That's not me. Right. And long story short, he says, "Look, dude, let me see if there's something for you in this organization, because I think you work well with the organization." Mm-hmm. So I left, and a couple of days later, an offer came through, and I came in as a marketing and sales associate with FedEx in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
And that was a continuation of my journey. Mm-hmm. Now I'm at the point where I'm actually head of marketing for that very same organization. Wow. That's a good Zimbabwean. You got to have a day job and hustle. But that's my story up to now, whereby I'm just trying to make the most of the abilities that I have. I think there's none of us, no one really knows their full direction. I think generally we have an idea of, I'm going northeast. And if you apply yourself, if you prepare, if you gain skills, if you develop yourself, if you read, you'll find yourself going the right way. Yeah. So just prepare yourself for opportunity. They say what luck is where opportunity meets preparation.
Exactly.
I think I've had a little bit of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
That's amazing.
I wanna zoom in or go back to a few things you've mentioned. It seems like you've had quite a bit of bad luck in between your good luck, like you mentioned, with what happened with your first job offer and then getting offered another job, planning to come back to South Africa and then going back to Zim. And that can be such a discouraging experience. And I mean, you mentioned it yourself, you went through quite a tough time. And can you share a little bit around, firstly, what that tough time looked like, and how have you, what skills or personality growth have you experienced from those tough times that have actually helped you? Because not only are you in multiple projects, but you have such a hopeful outlook at the moment, starting communities and starting new projects. And for a lot of people, looking at someone who has experienced a lot of hopelessness in instances throughout your life, and now you have so much hope, I just want to hear a bit about what led to that. What have you learned, or what is the thing inside you that's driving all of this?
Yeah, I think when I was going through a hard time, I was in South Africa with no job, no permit, and I had to figure out, okay, fine, am I going to go back home and face defeat, or am I going to try and make it out here? And I tried my hand, I tried to see, what could I do. I was a salesman for some investment products. I don't know if you know these funny investment products that they sell, where you go to different houses and try and sell a $20,000 investment product and all that. Those things don't work, by the way.
It's like Herbalife.
I know from experience. I spent all day between 8 a.m. and 5 o'clock walking around mainland Pretoria, in the hills, up and down, trying to sell to people and getting turned down left, right, and center.
Yes,
that's how I spent the day.
Rejection.
I would go home for about 30 minutes, change into my waiter's outfit. This is coming from organizing events with celebrities and all that stuff, and I had to humble myself to do that as well. Change into my waiter's outfit, go and do my shift, finish at 1 a.m., walk home in the dark and, look around and hope I don't get robbed for my few tips that I've made that day. And, eat your leftover dinner that you got from the restaurant. That was it for a good period, about 3-4 months. And I was like, you know what? Why am I kicking myself like this? I've been able to build quite a solid, brand where I am. And why am I putting myself through this? Why not go back and continue to build on what I was building on? And I think that's also something that people need to come to grips with, is that sometimes you don't need to hold on to a failing strategy.
Sure.
If it's not working, it's not working, man. Like there's no hero here. The only person who's gonna suffer is you. So yeah, but what I ultimately realized is, you know what? One thing, you won't die. That's important. You won't die. And if you don't die, there's so much more you can still go back and achieve. One thing that I've seen is that things only happen when you're doing things.
Yeah.
All right. So bad things can only happen to you if you're doing something. If you're sitting at your house and watching TV all day, nothing's gonna happen to you, because you're not putting yourself out there. So don't be afraid of things happening, because this is life. Things do happen. But I would rather be injured playing the game than sitting on the bench.
Yeah. There's this thing, like whether it's a person moving from the village into the city, or going from like one country to study in another country, or going from living in Africa to go and study in Europe. There's always this idea that you don't want to go back. You don't want to go back because it feels like you're going backwards, and you haven't made progress.
Exactly.
But the thing to always remember is that the progress is in how you've changed as a person. And I think with each time that you've had to go back to Zim, you've gone back as a different person. The first time you came to South Africa as just a standard student, and you went back to Zim as like a person who had graduated and made like 250,000 rand for the university. Then you came back here as like a person looking for an opportunity, and then in a sense you had to humble yourself to live in South Africa under the conditions that you've mentioned. And then when you went back as a person that could go from operating with celebrities to being a waiter, and that is personal growth. Like that requires a level of humility that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
I think really where you are right now is a testament to that growth. And I think a lot of people struggle with being able to eat that humble pie and just go home. And so I just wanted to highlight that.
And even to share the story, and even to share the story. Like a lot of people always say, "Taku, why are you so candid?" I'm super candid because, look, everyone has a story. And you'll be surprised the number of people that don't actually share with you what's going on, what they're going through, where they've been, how they feel. You'll be surprised, But there's a guy who came on my show. It's quite interesting. A guy who came on my show, he says, you'll meet someone who needs someone who can give them $10,000 for a deal. And that person will walk into the meeting acting like he's the boss with his shiny, spangly shoes. And you'll sit there and he'll miss his blessing. He'll miss his opportunity because the guy who's got the $10,000 to give you doesn't think you need it.
That is very true.
So, just bear your case as it is.
Yeah.
That's
and
very
important. I agree. That is so true. We need more people sharing their stories and just showing up more authentically, more relatable, so that we can also reach our full potential, our full authentic potential by seeing that people have done so themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can always tell, like, when let's say when someone's sharing this story, right, and they paint this idealistic picture where things was just like strength to strength, great to great, everything's perfect, I'm always performing. Everyone can always tell that you're hiding something. Nobody's life is perfect. If your life was perfect, everyone would already know about you, because everybody has got shit going on. And when a person actually is willing to share their struggles...
Plus, it's a boring story, right?
Exactly. Like, imagine watching a movie where the superhero kills a bad guy in, like, the first 5 minutes. And then the rest of the movie is just him celebrating. Like, that's not a movie. There has to be that, like, contention and conflict. And when you share like your struggles and your difficulties, you sort of make yourself relatable to the people who are in those struggles at the moment. And I think it's an important thing, especially I guess as a person who now has got the platform to be on radio, you know, on a weekly basis. It's in a sense almost like a duty to make yourself relatable in that way. And I think, you know, you spoke a lot about at the beginning, the types of guests that you guys are trying to get is to get these stories of, you know, young African people who have come from humble backgrounds and have made it. And it's the humble background that's more important than the made it, because there are more people who are in humble backgrounds than people who have made it. And so being able to see that relatable story is what lets them know that they can also do something with their lives if they put in the work. And so maybe one thing that I'd like us to maybe shift the conversation towards a little bit is this idea of inter-Africa collaboration. Because I think more and more it's sort of a discussion that's happening like quietly, like it's not loud and out there yet, but more and more it seems like people are speaking about it. And you know, like, I mean, with the growth of Nigeria and Kenya as tech spaces in Africa, it's becoming more and more important because the opportunities are starting to show that they're there. So can you tell us a little bit about like what was the original, like, you know, idea, or how did you guys come to actually bringing this Young African Network into being, or what was the purpose behind it?
All right, I think one thing that anyone who watches a little bit of news, follows a little bit of current affairs, if the eyes of the world are now on Africa, if the big companies are now focusing on, you know, Africa as an emerging market, we've got one of the biggest, you know, consumer bases coming up now. Why are us as, you know, SMEs, as entrepreneurs, not focusing more on African expansion? All right. I had a guest on my program. And you see, these days I just quote my guests because there's really, you know, really amazing people with lots of wisdom that come through, who says, you know, the day you decide to be rich, you need to start looking at Africa as one country, right? Because there we share a common market, right? If you have a product, you need a market to sell it to. There's only going to be so many people that can buy your stuff if you're in one market. So when you start looking at Africa from a bigger perspective. But ultimately, look, I personally feel that, you know, Africa is a powerhouse, right? Africa is a powerhouse that's misunderstood, and we ourselves have misunderstood it, merely because we've tried to copy-paste solutions that work elsewhere, but don't necessarily work here. Why? Because we're inherently different environments, right? So I don't think, you know, anyone can tell you that it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. You know, we need solutions tailored for this environment. You know, we have businesses like Borders. We have businesses like, mobile payments. You know, you have people in some countries that are selling water by the 20-liter container. You know, these are businesses you don't see anywhere else in the world. Right, our economics is very different. I think, you know, probably more similar to us as India. But they're highly advanced. But we need to, so, you know, in looking at that, you know, my idea is to get a group of young people together who share the same ideals, who can work together to develop solutions by Africans for Africans. Right. Look at our situation, look at our condition, look where we are, and create solutions that work within that space. If we start doing this, you know, having people like you, designers, you know, tech developers like yourselves, you are the people we need to start having these, you know, thinking like this. How can you make African lives simpler using tech, looking at the African model? Let's not copy-paste everything that's being done out there, because it's not going to work the same. Look at a place like Zimbabwe. You guys have Uber in South Africa because you have a market that's big enough and that has enough money to actually spend on Ubers. Now in Zimbabwe, if you're to have something like an Uber service, that's going to be expensive for a lot of people. You know, so you have a much smaller market to sell to. You know, so you need to look at, okay, fine, if only 10% of society can use this service, in this country, then what's 90% of them going to use for transport? And you tailor the solutions to that. So we really need to just get together as young people, young Africans, start collaborating, thinking, what can we do? What synergies can we make to develop solutions for Africans? Because this is a powerhouse. This is a powerhouse. I have my controversial sentiments, which I will not share on this podcast. But a great man once said that, Africa itself would be greater than the British Empire. Although he was misguided in how he effected his operation, I do believe that Africa will definitely overtake the British Empire and many other empires that have stood and that currently stand. An empire is not made in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. An empire is 100 years, 200 years. So when you start looking at it that way, and maybe this will happen when we are long gone, but at least we started something. And we can't say we started it because it's been going on forever. Anyway, people have known about this, but we are taking the revolution into the fourth industrial revolution, Let's get the minds out there that can really do the stuff. I'm no tech guy, but we're talking to you guys.
I love how you speak about it, and it's so inspiring, and it's almost like a pep talk, to the people listening that are living on this continent, because we get a lot of shade thrown on this continent, and the only way, and that affects people. It affects people's mental state or their perception as well around themselves in this continent. And the only way we can change that is from within. It's from having that sense of belief within the people around us. And we know it. It's the proof is in the pudding. It's around us. Look at the three people in this room, right? We're all three from three different African countries, which is amazing. And we know the talent is here. We know the people are here. We just need to empower each other to bring that to fruition. And Taka, I want to also ask, you said the Young Africa Network has been around now for almost a year, and you just shared the vision you have. What have you seen or done so far this past year? 1 year's passed. What has it been like?
Yes. Okay, no, so it's been pretty interesting, and I think the last year or so, we've really just gone more of a recruitment drive, trying to get more people on board on the program. So we conduct events. Our most recent event was with James Saruchera, budding entrepreneur. I call him the crazy genius because he really is. He's a crypto entrepreneur, and a gentleman called Takunda. Takunda is a remittance specialist. So we were just looking into what is going on in the digitization of money. How has money been revolutionized in the 21st century, and what does that mean for places like Zimbabwe, for places like Africa? It was really great affair. I think quite a lot of meaningful discourse was had, and for me, what I usually enjoy the most is the bit of networking at the end, because it's really it worked out exactly as we had imagined it to be. We had the right minds, and we had the right type of environment that was curated, where people felt very open to share their ideas, to discourse amongst each other, and it almost felt like we were in a huddle together, even though it was a room of about 100 people. So that was really amazing to have had. That was our second event as the Young Africa Network. The previous one we had done much earlier. That one was our launch event, which we had done actually in 2018, just before COVID hit and knocked us off the park. That was quite exciting. We've also partnered with organizations like Bros for Babes, which is a men's organization that works to alleviate menstrual challenges for women in underprivileged communities. So we try and engage men to actually get involved in these issues, which has been quite fundamental in what is one of our sort of flagship projects at the moment. We've also gone into relationships with organizations that do financial training. So our next big move is, look, it's one thing networking, it's one thing motivating each other, it's one thing sharing these stories, but ultimately let's empower each other to take the next step. And one of the biggest hurdles that people say is that I'm struggling to get capital. All right. Why? It's because people don't keep books. People don't know how to present books. They don't know how to do projections. So our next rollout is on the training phase, which we are rolling out to our members in our community. For external members, of course, dollars. But for current members of the community, we'll be rolling that out for the team. And it's really exciting how we're developing, from strength to strength and trying to make it a bit more meaningful for everyone who's involved.
I really like your focus on the financial part as well. Myself and Alfie, like I mentioned, we met at APSA, and during our time there, we did a project investigating the beliefs that people have within South Africa around money. And I think it's like most of the current literature around financial mindsets in this country says or proves, is that there's such a large lack of financial literacy, and that's mostly also due to the lack of the resources to teach people to become financially literate. And you have all these programs that try and stimulate and empower small businesses or entrepreneurial mindsets, but a lot of the time these programs or organizations do lack, like you were just saying, the financial part of it. Because essentially, if people don't know how to manage capital, get capital, or use the capital and utilize it to actually build their business, then there's no actual point to it all, to have all these great ideas, to know how to present them if you can't sustain them or actually build them out. So it's really nice to hear that you're not also only focusing on the community aspect, the needs, what's the need, the project, cool, let's do this, but also just the training part to make people able and capable to do it as well.
Yeah, I think one of the main things I've witnessed in the space, at least, and it does bother me a little bit because I'm a little bit passionate about it. I'm a little bit of a right wing about it, I guess. is I think a lot of money is being thrown at it, and that's not the way forward. You'll hear people saying we've spent this much on youth empowerment, on youth development, but there's no real intent behind it. It's money being thrown behind something so you can fulfill a CSR budget or whatever. I don't see any real passion, any real intent, any real consistency, any real follow-up on a lot of these issues. I don't see, this was a conversation that I had with one of the big executives of a South African accounting firm. No names will be mentioned before you guys get kicked off the internet. But I was curious enough to ask, what are your actual traps for entrepreneurs? How are you actually targeting to recruit entrepreneurs? And after having a debate with her for a while, she then realized, wait a second, we don't actually like recruiting entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are going to come here. You're going to come and get our ideas. You're going to come and learn our best practices. And within 3 to 4 years, you're leaving and going to start your own company. So what I quickly realized is that, a lot of money is being thrown at the issue, but no one is actually looking at the entrepreneur and saying, what is the entrepreneur like? How do I actually find these entrepreneurial minds? How do I stimulate them to come forward to me? Not many people are doing that. So a lot of lip service is being paid on entrepreneurship. But if you think about it, people, you're the competition. Yeah. People want workers, man. They don't want entrepreneurs.
That's true. And I think that is the one place that I think the government can actually play a role if the government is serious about helping. Now, as you did mention, you can't wait for the government to save you. Yeah. But I do think if you are a person in government and you're looking for a place to create impact, whether it's to create jobs or to develop in a specific industry, entrepreneurs are really an important place to target, because when you've got strong entrepreneurs, you've got strong SMEs. When you've got strong SMEs, you've got jobs. When you've got jobs, you've got a youth that's actually able to work and contribute to the economy.
Jobs. That's all we want. Yeah. But hey,
Yeah.
jobs will be over soon, so best get your tech up.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We catch you next week. Cheers.